Want to call this order? Madam Clerk?
Dr. Chase? Oh, sorry.
Here.
Present.
Ms. Decatur?
Here.
Ms. Egan? Ms. Hazard?
Here.
Ms. Healy?
Here.
Mr. McCosker?
Here.
Ms. Young?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? for the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda?
Second. Motion by Ms. Young, second by Ms. Decatur. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Let's go to the agenda. All right, the first item on the agenda is 3.01. Is that correct? As it hasn't been updated, right? Correct. Okay, 3.01, approve the fiscal year 2019 budget. Motion. We need a motion and a second in order to have a discussion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. What was your name?
What's your name?
Second by Dr. Chase. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, wait a minute. No. I take that back. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Now we can have a discussion. I apologize. I'm rolling along here. All right, so we have a discussion. Who wants to start? We're just going to go down the line. Holly, do you want to start, Ms. Hazard?
Sure. Give me just a second. Mood lighting sort of threw me for a second. Hold on.
Everybody's going to have something to say, so you may as well just go one at a time.
That's okay.
Tease you.
Let's see. Okay, this, I assume these are the numbers that we saw last time. I know, I'm sorry. I had to.
Sorry, Mom.
This does not include anything additional related to security. Is that true, Mr. Fulmer?
This is exactly as you saw it last week, with the exception of a $500,000 placeholder for security infrastructure upgrades. And in the handouts
Now I
we
see it.
provided,
Sorry.
the resolutions on top and behind that are the listing of some of those proposed upgrades.
Okay. All right. Now I got it.
Okay, so there is an attachment that says proposed security project listing.
Right. We have a
And that's, right, but now that listing comes to $773,500. But do I understand that you put a $500,000 placeholder?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if we were to go with this entire list, we would have to actually increase the budget by $273,500. Correct?
Correct.
Or we could reduce it. That's up to the board.
Why would we reduce it? I don't,
No, I'm not suggesting we are. I'm just saying if we were to. Those are our choices. The budget that we have before us
Is it already included?
Is $500,000 is included as a placeholder for these upgrades.
yeah. I get it. I'm not sure. No, you're okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So for these security upgrades, do we not already have audio and electronic notification for exterior doors at all of the schools? Or is this additional doors or
We do,
whatever?
Dr. Chase. We want to expand our access to where it is that you have, you can get to that in the schools, and we ask Mr. Horan can respond to that more specifically. So we see these as going another level, okay? We do have, at all of our main entrances, we have our A-phones, secure access, and then this is adding some additional places where the badges that our swipe can get us in, as well as locking a second door that leads from the office area into the remainder of the building that would be controlled by folks in the office. So it's another layer.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was clear that we actually do already have at all of our schools.
We have a security vestibule
Right.
and A-phones at all of our schools.
Terrific. I just wanted clarification there. Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Ms. Heather.
Sure. So I just wanted to make sure we talked through those. I will be voting in favor tonight of this. I think this budget continues to work on our implementation of many of our compensation schedules and showing the progress we are trying to make. The only concerns that I received from members in the Hartwood District was a concern about the reduction by the board of the 4 growth positions. What I did say is that this was premised on the 382 new students coming in, and all that I did was caution that should that number wildly increase, we would have to re-examine positions, but we are basing that on a number provided by the state, I think in conjunction with our enrollment, how that goes. But that was the main concern that was raised, that what if? And I said, well, it can happen every year. So that was the one concern that was raised by my constituents. But otherwise, I will be supporting it, and I would like to include the 500,000 placeholder, knowing that this too is a long-term, just like our compensation model, of a phased long-term investment in security.
Thank you. Mr. Cater?
I don't have anything to add other than just thank you guys so much for the additional work that you had to do for us scheduling this
Sure.
meeting, getting these things added. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Ms. Young?
I have a quick question, Dr. Benson. Did we talk about the panic button? I don't see it in here for the security.
We currently have panic buttons in all of our schools. The majority of them are configured to go to a call center. I think we have one at Rodney Thompson that is configured directly to 911. We are planning to convert them all to direct 911 connections through the panic button. But I would also note that we have a backup in the form of a radio that's available in each one of the schools that have a direct connection to 911.
The other question I had, it just came to me just a second ago, in terms of the students coming into the door. Every single one of them have backpacks. I am not a proponent of checking bags or anything, but what are we doing? What are we planning on doing where that's concerned? Like, somebody could, be waiting for somebody to come in the school with one already in the morning. How do we plan on addressing that?
So we have, over the years, discussed whether or not we should be considering some kind of electronic detection means, metal detector, walk-through metal detector, a wanding situation. We have not moved in that direction. If that's something that the board would like us to explore, we certainly can do that. That's not just a cost issue, though. It's also a logistics issue. When you look at the size of our schools, a high school the size of Colonial Forge, and being able to have to check every child potentially could create some significant logistical issues for us. I would just also say, though, that we rely heavily on our school communities and students in those communities in helping us identify potential threats, and we've seen that play out recently in a favorable manner.
Do we have a hotline?
Do we have a hotline for what?
Just for students, teachers, just concerns.
So we have
parents.
We have an opportunity to go through the sheriff's office to report things anonymously, and anybody could do that. We have a feature in one of our software applications that would allow anonymous tips to be provided at the school level, which we are exploring as a mechanism to collect additional information. But we've got some more work to do there yet.
Okay. Can you let me know how that goes? 'Cause I think that's important. Some folks don't want to call the sheriff's office because they're afraid that, it's documented. And so if it's a tip line, then that's fine. But that would be good if we could have one inside of the school system. What do I have? Do we go like just one round, or
Yes.
do we have opportunity for
Hopefully
one
one
more?
round. We don't have a lot of time because of the
Okay.
3-on-3.
All right,
But
go
no,
ahead.
you're welcome if you're not done. You go
No,
ahead.
no. If there's more time later on, I will. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Yes.
All right, Ms. Egan.
I'm just a little confused about what was asked of us.
I see, we have a resolution in here about the SRO program.
Well,
but I-
that's after we have the budget. That's the second item on the agenda.
Okay, that should, well, my question, it's related to the budget, because I'm wondering why aren't those dollars in the budget? Or why are we not asking for, I mean, the Board of Supervisors wants to know how much do we have to allocate to keeping the schools safe, whether it's going to the Sheriff's Department. They have to know how much money they need to put out for the SRO program. So is that something that David Decatur is going to take care of with giving the numbers to the Board of Supervisors, or?
The supervisors have a number, I believe. Mr. Snelling's had a number, did he not?
They did. They had an average cost per sheriff's deputy, but I think Sheriff Decatur would be in the best position to tell us what that cost would be.
Well, did we let them know how many we need and what schools need to be covered? And
So he, if you don't mind me jumping in, he will be at our 3-on-3 tonight. So if there is I asked him to come to have that conversation as far as our request is concerned for them.
all right, I'm just concerned that if those dollars aren't reflected in the budget, no matter where it originates from, whether it's here or the Sheriff's Department, that it's going to be overlooked. That's my concern. So,
Okay, we'll address that when we get to the resolution.
That's fine.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the budget? No? Dr. Chase?
I just wanted to say that I think you all did a great job of trying to meet the mission of the supervisors, which is to come up with the funding we need to have a globally competitive school system. And I hope that we get the funds to actually have a globally competitive school system. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. Mr. McOsker?
Thank you. Good job. Nope. No other permanent comments. Nope.
And I have nothing to add to what's already been said. So are we ready to vote on this? Do you have something else, Ms. Decatur?
Is there any way that we can get a brief rundown just based on a few of the public comments that have been made? Can we have a brief rundown of an idea of a timeline for looking at the other groups of employees? Has that been done or created? Or?
That's a Dr. Benson question.
So first thing we have to do is identify a company to do our analysis for us, and we're in the process of looking at that right now. Obviously, we would like them to do that as quickly as possible, but there are a fair number of positions just within the context of administrative assistants, because those responsibilities vary greatly depending upon what level of support they're providing, and we want to make sure that we get a good analysis there. So I'm confident that in relatively short order that we'll have some recommendations. I know that group was studied in 2006, and that there had been some recommendations that had been acted upon at that time. But we'll know where we stand with the rest of the positions, administrative assistants and every other position that has not been compared so far.
If you had to estimate, would you say that analysis may be done within the next school year so we could have a look at it for the next budget season? Is it maybe one budget season out?
I'm confident that we will have that information to the board in order to inform wherever we might go in the next budget cycle.
Okay.
I'd like to get it as soon as possible. I think it's probably going to be difficult for the board to make any adjustments in the FY19, but we can at least forecast where we think we're going to go and see how close we are to market there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benson. When you do get to a point to awarding that contract, could you just, advise the board and see if the contractor would agree to a specific time frame to have that to us, even if they have to do it in increments? I would think that we would need to have it by the start of the school year to really be effective, because we're going to be well into the budget by that point. Thank you. Ms. Young, did you?
Sure. Should just take a couple of seconds. So I know that the cost of people goes up every year. And the 5 top employers for Stafford County, Geico is first, Stafford County Schools is second, FBI is third, Department of Defense, and then comes County of the Stafford County, and then Walmart. So Stafford County School System has employees that must support their families. Administration also have students in the school system. We also talk about wanting the best school system because we moved here for that reason. And so that's backing up what Dr. Chase just mentioned. The Board of Supervisors' job is to set the tax rate, and I'm not telling them what to do. But I would like to urge the Board of Supervisors that whatever they transfer to the schools, that it's fully fund our budget when it is presented. For example, if a tax rate is 99 cents, which is a 0.035 tax increase of about $16 a year to the property tax bill of a 450,000 home, what is 35 cents? 35 cents is $16 a year, or 2 Wawa hoagies, or 0.35 cents is $16 a year, 2 Starbucks special coffee, or it could be 1 Regal movie ticket. But for teachers, administrators, paralegals, bus drivers, monitors, this move is priceless.
Thank you.
That's it.
Anybody else? No? All right, we'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion to approve the fiscal year 2019 budget, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we come to 3.02, which is to adopt a resolution requesting the Stafford County Board of Supervisors add additional school resource officers with the goal of having 1 school resource officer at each school location. And Mrs. Egan has raised the question about the dollars not being in here. And I know one reason that we have not put them in is because we don't really have that information here. Is the school board, we can ask for it, but there's really not a way that we will know that we have complete and reliable information. So I would be reluctant to put a dollar figure, in this resolution without something in writing, from the sheriff or from the county as to what that is, because when you compute, they have to add in benefits and other costs. They may have to add in training. And what the resolution is asking us to send over, after all the whereases, it says, now therefore be it resolved that the Stafford County School Board on March 5th, 2018, requests the Stafford County Board of Supervisors invest in the safety and security of Stafford County Public Schools students and staff by providing a school resource officer in each of the county schools. Now, this would be something that perhaps you could discuss this evening. Thank you, Ms. Decatur, for inviting Sheriff Decatur to the 3-on-3. But my understanding is that we've had some contacts, have we not, Dr. Benson, with the Sheriff's Office?
I did have a conversation with Sheriff Decatur. I'm thankful that he's going to be at the Joint Schools Working Committee this afternoon. I would just add a note, if it's a pleasure of the board. We put the resolution together at a time when we thought we were going to be presenting the school board's funding request tomorrow, and I think the board had some interest in wanting to have that resolution ready to go at the time that we were presenting the funding request. That appears to now be March 20th, and given that the board is looking at this language for the first time this evening, if it's a pleasure of the board, it could come back on the next agenda because we'll still make it in time for the budget presentation.
Does anyone want this to come back at the next meeting? This is the resolution? Mrs. Hazard?
I think it would be a good idea, and the only language in here, and please know I support the SROs, I don't know, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth whereas, when we say that the presence of a school resource officer is the most important safety and security enhancement in schools, I'm not sure that, I am not the expert, but I truly believe that our counselors, we have pushed for how many years to get our diagnosticians into the schools for this reason. I compliment Hartwood Elementary School. What they did and they chose to do with their Title I funds was not to buy books and stuff. They invested in a full-time social worker to be in that school, and I think that is invaluable. And as much as I think it is a critical, important safety, I'm struggling with the word most, because I think that it's, going to be a broader package. And as Dr. Benson said, I've been so impressed with our students who have come forward and identified things that were wrong. That's, to me, the best thing we can, is be developing that. And I think a resource officer, but I'm sort of struggling with the mental health piece of this. So, or critical.
What?
That's all that
Okay, I believe that's in there because we had asked Dr. Benson, what is your number one priority with respect to safety in the schools? And Dr. Benson's recommendation was, number one, put a full-time school resource officer in every school. So that's why, and this is enhancement. This isn't say the most important. It says the most important safety and security enhancement. It doesn't matter to me. We can make a change, but that's why that's there. That we've looked at, at our superintendent who is responsible for the operation of our 31 schools and asked him, in your view, what is the most important? And that was his view. And that's why it's there. And if it's not the most important, then I think that we need to think about what is the most important, because we ought to be asking for what is the most important rather than just asking for something. So that,
I know.
do we need to have a discussion, and we can put that on the agenda for the next meeting. I mean, I accept the superintendent's recommendation here that this is the most important, and that's why I was wanted to have this resolution here so we could send it over and of course it was in anticipation of us going over tomorrow so we could take it with us so we don't necessarily have to have it, but it's something we can talk about next week if we want to. If we don't want to do it tonight, we can just defer it to the discussion at the next meeting, so we can either take action or we can put it on for action at the next meeting. Yes, Dr. Chase.
So I'm a little bit in agreement with Ms. Hazard. I'm concerned that this request will result in the supervisors taking the $1.2 million for 19 SROs away from what they would be giving us for this coming year. And so just to give a little perspective, last year there were 25 related gun injuries at schools and there were 13 gun deaths. But in 2015...
Is that nationwide?
That was nationwide. And then nationwide, suicides between children ages 10 to 24 were almost 6,000. So when I think about the best use of our dollars and the most likely thing that's going to happen, I'm not sure that SROs is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. So I'd like more discussion about this before I make that request. I'd like some assurance at the 3-on-3 that they're not going to be taking with one hand, giving with one hand and taking away with the other.
Well, fortunately, that meeting's coming up.
Correct.
So, all right, well, let's defer this. Is there consensus we want to defer this, Mr. Cater?
Could I just double check? Does that kind of resolve your question as well, Irene? Because I want to make sure I understand.
I guess we'll find out at 6 o'clock. I'm a little apprehensive about all this because the message that I got Tuesday night was do your homework, be ready for next week, tell us what you need, give us the bottom line dollar amount, and this isn't the bottom line dollar amount. So
okay. I was under the impression that because we have a list that has a bottom line dollar amount.
Well, that does.
And I was under the impression that we don't need to mess with the bottom line dollar amount as far as the SROs are concerned because it's not our. Would that be fair to say? It's not really our
to an extent. The other part of that is that it's upon us to give them the information, how many SROs do we need, so that they can calculate, do we need one for every elementary school? Is there anyone missing in a middle school? Do we want to do 2 at every high school? I think they're looking for a bottom line. What are our needs? That's what I heard out of Mr. Cavalier the other night.
Right.
So,
and this resolution also, it only talks about in each of our schools, and we have other campuses, so I don't know if those are included as being our schools, but yeah, I guess
right.
We can have that
so that's basically, that's where my apprehension comes from, is that they're asking for, give it to us, tell us what your needs are and your bottom line, and we'll see if we can make that happen. And I just feel like we're we're not meeting that request with what we have here. So we'll find out tonight. They might tell us, you guys need to go back and have a work session and figure this out and get it to us ASAP. County administrator's giving his budget presentation tomorrow, I believe. Is that right? So I would like for him to be on the same page as everybody as well, to say the school division has these needs and it includes 25 SROs. So that's just where I'm coming from. So I guess we'll find out.
No, well, we can have that
30 minutes.
discussion right now. I mean, we're scheduled, we got 15 minutes left in the schedule. So, if that's important information for you to take with you tonight, then I think we need to address it now. Right now, we have 12 SROs throughout our school system. There's one assigned to each high school and then the middle schools. And, some of them share, some have full-time, and they visit the elementary.
So I believe it's 13.
It's 13?
One
Oh,
is
good.
vacant. I'm sorry.
It's,
one position is vacant.
Do we count a vacancy?
Well, we'd like them to fill it.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are 12 bodies filling SROs, apparently. If there's 12, how long has that been vacant? Hate to get off the subject, but we need to find that out, why it hasn't been filled. All right, now we have 31 schools, but Mr. Cater raises a good question about the campuses. Do we want to request something for the alternative school? I assume that's not included in that, correct? Are there any other campuses? Head Start is included in the 31, correct?
I have a question. So when you're talking about the outside campuses, are we talking about the ones that exist today or the ones that we're going to have in the future?
Just today.
Because then we need to include the ones that we're going to have next year.
We don't know what we're
Christian?
going to have. No, we don't know what we're going to have next year.
Okay.
But that's a good point, too. I think we could
Because-
put in this resolution, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if I don't get this thought out, I might lose it. We could put in here that we have one in each of our schools and any other schools that are, that are added to Stafford County Public Schools. So that's a good point.
Yeah,
So we
okay.
could automatically include the future ones. They won't have a dollar.
Yeah, and the other comment I wanted to make, I wasn't sure if you were done, but I wanted to. Okay, so the other comment I wanted to make is that we told the staff to come up with this information because we were talking about the resource officers. We did not talk about social, behavioral, mental. I mentioned that last week. That, to me, is a separate discussion. I don't think we need to, confuse the two or mix the two up right now. We need to separate those two. We're talking about resource officers that the sheriff was going to help us with when they discuss that. That's what we should stick to that. And then when we talk about behavior and social worker, that's part of, hiring more social workers in the school system. And separate the two versus, saying go back and reevaluate. If we reevaluate it, just make sure that we're separating the two, that's all.
And we are getting the information together at the chair and the vice chair meeting earlier was it this week?
Yep.
Time flies.
No,
last
week.
whatever.
Last week.
Last
Could have been
week.
this
Well,
week.
it's still in the same cycle. Last Wednesday, we were asked how many social workers we have in Stafford County Public Schools, and Dr. Benson's putting that information together. And of course, anything that he shares with the supervisors, he will share with us as well.
I'd like to say something real quick since I haven't. I think I'm the only one who hasn't said anything. So let me very quickly just
jump in.
So I look at this as the safety and security of our students on a short-term and then a long-term basis. I think that the short-term, to mitigate the short-term effects and the bad stuff that can happen to our kids, the short-term is the SROs in the school with a weapon and a badge of one of our deputies. I think that the long-term plan would definitely be to talk about, the counseling and the mental health aspect of it and how we can get better as a school board and as a county to make sure our kids are really getting there. So that's the short term and the long term. I just get cautious when I think we all agree that a short term solution to this, not that we're going to discard counseling, but we get up in the committee and we could be 2 years later and we still won't have a school resource officer in the schools. And it was about 19 schools we talked about. that don't have one at about 60, the same costs that we have, but the sheriff will have to come back with that. There's that full-time equivalent cost, that FTE cost that an officer sheriff is, and it's about $69,000 off the cuff. So those are some of the things. The things that were put in our budget, and I thank the staff for the short-term turnaround, was those physical security things that Jack Cavalier talked about, that he'd like to see in our budget. That is something that goes in our budget, that goes on, it's our color of money. And I appreciate the staff getting a good look and putting that stuff in there. However, I'd be cautious to try to own the sheriff's color of money, because that is a county expense. Will they fund that county expense and then take it away from us? Well, that's on them. That we can't do much about that, but it is definitely on their plate to fund those SROs. So.
All right, well, before we end, I think we need to at least see if we can come to a consensus about how many of these positions we're asking for, because that's what Mrs. Egan is saying. I need to be able to tell them, dollar-wise, what we're asking for. Now, we can say positions, they'll have to translate positions to dollars because they're going to have those figures. If they were school figures, no problem, we could do it. So what are we going to be asking for?
If we could, if you don't mind me saying so, if we could, I think, have this discussion at a later time, because I hear you saying it was asked that we bring it over, but we kind of are. We'd like to see security at every campus. So we've asked for that with Dr. Benson's guidance, and Dr. Benson has had discussions with Sheriff Decatur, but also the point of inviting him into this conversation tonight is because he's the professional. So we want to see SROs at each of our campuses, but we also want to get his professional opinion as to what that would look like, how much it would cost, when they could have it done by. So I think having the answers to those questions would lead us to a better conversation, maybe at next week. Would that be helpful for you? Because we are asking, but before we can really comfortably ask, we also have to have some answers, which we're going to get here shortly.
But this resolution is proposed is in each of our schools, and that would be a total of 31. So if we want to talk about our campuses, we have to add +1, right? I'll add, is there any other campus that would be?
17 elementary schools, right?
17, yes.
Right. Okay, plus
8
high
middle.
schools. 5.
Middle schools, if that position is filled, the vacancy is filled, we're covered at the secondary level. So we would be talking about all of the elementary schools. Gary Melcher and the board will have to have some conversation about if alternative ed, that would be included. So that would put us at 19.
19 plus the 13.
19 additional.
19 additional. And that, we're going to need to make the point that there's a vacancy now, because I don't want them to add 19 and 12 and come up with 31, which is how many schools we have. So we're talking about every school plus the alt ed. Correct, and that's fine. I just want to be clear so you can at least have something to tell them this is what we're discussing. Is that?
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
I think I'm hearing the same thing. I'm focused on the same thing. I would ask maybe our 3-on-3 members tonight to inquire with the sheriff, as Ms. Healy also mentioned, and just to reiterate it, concerning what is the hiring of SROs. I mean, it's great if we go and we ask for these things, but if there is an issue long-term hiring SROs, like what kind of recruit, how can we make this work? Because I, like you can put 19 additional positions, but if you only fill 2, it doesn't meet the long-term goal. So I would just, for me, it would be helpful for the 3-on-3 members to report back to us on sort of the discussion tonight. I think it would help me in a week. I do support this. I'm not trying to say that, but I just want to make sure that we, just have that broader discussion, if that's
Sure.
okay.
And I understand that there is a significant training period that's involved in this. So even if the county were to approve this, that doesn't mean we'll get SROs next week or even next month. It's going to be months from now because they have to go through the recruitment and training. So
Well, they can still grab from within. A lot of their existing deputies would like to take an SRO position, but again, you still have the training that they have to go through. It's not just the academy. Now you have to go through school resource officer training. So there's a totally different
And perhaps
thing.
we could ask, to inquire as to if anyone can get back to us on why this position has remained unfilled. I mean, to me, that's significant. If we've got an approved position and it's funded, why is it not filled? Or do you have that answer?
I don't, Madam Chair, but I also understand there are a number of vacancies just in the sheriff's office at the deputy level.
Well,
So-
then they'll probably have an answer for us. But yes, you're absolutely right, Ms. Hazard. We can ask and ask and ask, but if they're not going to be coming in, then we need to refocus what we're asking for and perhaps, ask for something different.
Yeah, and I have another comment. So when episodes happen, and so, for example, lockdown, I know the sheriffs, they show up and they end up at the school all day sometimes. They see the need for that because, is there a way that temporarily they could look at some of the schools that they deem have a lot of call-ins and see if they could be there meanwhile while they are looking at resources? I mean, we're talking about months, but we can't wait to
I think that's
secure
part
our
of the
kids for
conversation that we
months.
should have with Sheriff
On the
Decatur.
3-on-3, yeah.
I mean, I would just note,
I'll write that down and we'll talk about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is a good discussion, and I think it's given us more to look into. We'll bring this back on the agenda for next week. Now, if there's something that comes out of the meeting this evening that, that our committee wants to propose a change in this, just let Dr. Benson know, and then we can have, a different resolution come forward. We can bring this one forward, but or a revised one, based on, the discussion tonight, if our committee wants to make a recommendation to this board, I would consult in consultation with Dr. Benson and, with responding to information we received from Sheriff Decatur, as well as the Board of Supervisors. Please feel free to, make any adjustments to this before it comes back, but it will be on the agenda at the next meeting. Okay, so we have 3 minutes. We need to talk about our presentation to the Board of Supervisors. We have a work session scheduled at 5 o'clock. Mrs. Baumke said we can do our presentation, any time, at that meeting. Now, from a practical standpoint, it seems to me we're going to have to do it before we have our work session so that they know what our presentation is and what we're going to talk about. I know we had talked about the 7 o'clock agenda, but I don't know. Is there any choice here? I think 3 o'clock may be early for, people to come in. I don't think it's going to take us 2 hours to do that presentation, and, depending on, what the, what else we have to do.
Audience support? Do you want public support? Then it needs to be a little later. 3 o'clock is too early.
Well, I mean, is there a pleasure of the board?
My preference is, and I believe Mr. Hayes spoke to this the other night, about making it so he can activate his membership to support the board by, having it at 7 o'clock so that they can all go speak to the budget, so they can support us. I tend to agree with it, and it's not just for the SEA membership, but it's for a lot of our parents who would like to actively participate in supporting our budget. So my vote would be to have it at 7 o'clock.
Agreed. Okay, what about the work session? Y'all want to have a work session is scheduled, or what's your response to that? I mean, we have a work session scheduled at 5.
Do we need the work session to
Yes, that's
review
been
it?
that's been on the agenda for months.
What's the point? What are we doing?
Well, what we were supposed to be doing was to discussing, the budget.
Okay, wouldn't that be better done after our presentation? To iron out any differences or misunderstandings or misconceptions about what we're asking for? Just curious.
We can ask
We
for,
need to have that work session because getting 14 people's calendars together has been, in the past, a disaster. I'm looking at Mr. McCosker because we kind of laughed of we were trying to get, 6 people together, and we couldn't even pull it off. That is on the calendar. I agree, in the perfect world, we thought things were going to play out, but I am cautious or hesitant to cancel a 7-on-7 that we have scheduled, because I will tell you, the following week will be the week before spring break. The following week is spring break. That's when they do the tax rate. We get out of time, in my opinion. I mean, I wish it was different, but I don't think we send the right signal if we cancel that work session. That's just my thought.
Can we not use the work session to prepare for the presentation? I mean, and if we have any questions at that point, we have the staff to ask.
No, we are talking about that.
Okay.
No, you're talking about it's exactly right. This work session was intended to be after our presentation. This is when we thought we were going to be presenting tomorrow. So if we had presented tomorrow, then it would have been timely to have this work session next week. That was the plan, but it's no longer the plan.
My thought is we should go ahead and have a presentation, probably around 4:30, and then the work session at 5, and then hope that people come out at 7 and speak to the supervisors.
Mr. McOsker, do you have any thoughts? No? Any other discussion?
I think the later on the agenda, at 3 is better, so we may not be at 3 o'clock, which is probably the most difficult time. But if we can say, do most of your other business and then,
Well,
I don't know.
We have flexibility in terms of that timing. I mean, if we could say 4:30, it's not the perfect world, but at least we would have made our presentation and we'd have something official to discuss at the joint work session. How's that? 4:30?
I think that's the best.
All right, and the consensus I was feeling was that the chair and the vice chair would make the presentation. Is that what the board
Yes,
wants at this
definitely.
point? Okay.
Definitely.
No offense, Dr. Benson.
Yeah, we love you.
I just want to say that on both our calendars, and I know we had our calendar creator showing that the 6th of March was supposed to be our briefing to the Board of Supervisors on this, but it fell off.
Can I just ask how it fell off? I'm just.
It was on our, and supposedly it was on theirs. I don't know.
Well,
But we, as a FAB, set the calendar, so.
And the calendar read 6 March presentation to Board of Supervisors, and we
as a board approved that calendar.
We approved it as a board months ago.
It was not the FAB didn't set that. We as a board set that, and we approved it. But there was a miscommunication, I'll leave it at that, with the staff at the county. And the county showed that the budget was going to present it on the 6th. Well, we presumed that was the school board presenting to the county, and the county presumed that was the county presenting to the county. And, they're going to trump us in terms of a presentation
So the school board's calendar, our calendar said present on the 6th.
Yes.
And it did not get put on theirs.
Well,
but we assumed that we were going to continue on for the 6th.
They showed a budget presentation on the 6th.
They thought it was the.
We thought that was ours. They thought it was theirs. So guess who gets to do it? Not us. But that's okay, because next year, we're going to be
learning
in concrete, right, Dr. Benson? Yes. We'll just have to make the best of it. But in one respect, it does give us a little more time, and we can iron out, what we want to do with the SROs, and we'll have more time to make plans for the presentation. So we will advise the Mrs. Baumke and Dr. Benson. Can you take care of that? Let Mr. Foley know that we are planning to make our presentation at 4:30 prior to the 5 o'clock work session, and that we appreciate their flexibility and the timing on that day, because that was, I think, very gracious to give us the choice on when we want to present. If we didn't have the work session, no doubt it would be 7 o'clock, but
Right.
it is what it is. All right, anything else before we adjourn? 30 seconds early? No? Oh, no, we're not. We're 4.5 minutes late. Oops.
Minutes late.
Let's go.